Anselm van Hulle or Anselmus van Hulle was a Flemish painter mainly of portraits whose works were highly prized at the northern European courts. Life. Anselm van Hulle was baptized in the St. Bavo church in Ghent on the 23rd of July 1601. He was the son of Egidius van Hulle. He may have been a pupil of Gaspar de Creye, a leading Baroque painter from Antwerp working mainly in Brussels. A training with such a prominent painter was relatively expensive. Van Hulle came from a wealthy family owning various lands and annuities, which he had partially inherited, and was thus able to afford the cost of such a training should it in effect have taken place. Van Hulle became a master in the Guild of St. Luke of Ghent in 1620. He probably made a trip to Italy in 1631 but was back in Ghent in the same year. He married on the 14th of December 1631 with Lavina of Tween. The couple had 4 children, who were all baptized in the St. Bavo church. It is not clear when he moved to the Dutch Republic. He became court painter to the Dutch stadtholder Frederick Henry, Prince of Orange. The Van Hulle made various portraits of persons of the Orange dynasty. The prince sent him in 1645 or 1646 to Munster to make portraits of the delegates who attended the peace negotiations for the Peace of Munster. Van Hulle established a large workshop in Munster to make the portraits and copies of the same. The Flemish painter Jean-Baptiste Florius was likely initially an employee of Van Hulle's workshop and later started working for his own account by making portraits mostly based on Van Hulle's work. Florius is recorded as having received a commission for 34 portrait paintings of the delegates for the Munster Town Council at a price of 10 thalers. Van Hulle typically charged 10 ducats for a bust painted by himself. Van Hulle's workshop produced many copies of the delegates' portraits which were often acquired by the delegates themselves and by the local councils of cities in the region where the peace talks were held, such as Munster and Osnabrück. Van Hulle was active as an art dealer during his residence in Munster. He left Munster for a while in 1647 to attend to an inheritance matter in the family of his wife. After the conclusion of the peace negotiations in Munster, Van Hulle followed the delegates to Nuremberg where the debriefings took place in 1649. His patron Frederick Henry died the same year. He travelled to Kassel in 1650 and was active at the Dresden court in 1651. He probably also worked at other courts in the region. From 1652 he was active in Vienna where he entered the service of Emperor Ferdinand III. The emperor gave him a peerage on the 27th of August 1652. The emperor sent him to Gottorp Castle in 1653 to paint a portrait of Frederick III, Duke of Holstein-Gottorp. He then returned to Vienna. The last known record about Van Hulle relates to his administration of the estate of Lavina van den Tuin, for which he appeared before a notary in Ghent, together with his son Peter. Work. Van Hulle has been described as a painter of portraits and history paintings. However, only portrait paintings are currently attributed to him. His portrait paintings include single portraits, family portraits, bust portraits and equestrian portraits. He was a portrait painter to the elite. He was able to establish his international fame mainly thanks to the portraits that he made of the delegates to the peace negotiations for the Peace of Munster. Not only were many copies of the paintings made, but they were also widely distributed through engravings after these paintings. As court painter to the Prince of Orange, Van Hulle was able to obtain a printing privilege in March 1648. He had reproductions made from his sketches by the leading engravers in Antwerp, such as Paulus Pontius, Conrad Wormans, Cornelius Gall the Younger and Peter de Jode II. The engravings were made on copper plates with a size of approximately 30 by 20 centimeters and printed on large format paper sheets of up to 41 by 32 centimeters. The prints show the bust of the delegate in an oval in which his motto is inscribed. Above him the coat of arms of the entity that the delegate represents at the peace negotiations. Below the coat of arms of the delegate's family, and below this a cartouche with the delegate's titles. The architectural framework of each portrait is in the form of an epitaph which emphasizes that the portrait was made for posterity. The delegates approved the final version of the motto, coats of arms and the titles of the portraits. Van Hulle received financial assistance from the city of Munster for his printing project. In 1648 a first edition of the prints was published in Antwerp by Daniel Midler under the title Celeberrime Legati ad Pacificandum Christiani, nominis orbem, legati ad monasterium Osnabrugis ex omni paingentium nationumque genera missi. Ad vivum Anselmi v. Hulle penicillo expressi uscura per ingenius huius avi sculptors caello representati. This edition contained about 35 to 37 plates. The engravings were also sold individually, so that each diplomat could assemble a personal selection of portraits and have them bound with a specially printed title page. As a result, no two of these anthologies are the same in the selection and sequence of the sitters. In 1648 Van Hulle had 39 engravings produced, and in 1649 another 43. In later years Van Hulle continued to make portraits of the participants in the negotiations on the implementation of the Peace of Munster in Nuremberg in 1649, and as an itinerant painter at various German princely courts. The Diet of Regensburg of 1653-1654 and the imperial election in Frankfurt in 1657-1658. Finally, his collection of portrait paintings and engravings had grown to 132. Many pirated editions were made by Dutch publishers. The Strasbourg publisher Peter Aubrey also made a series of 94 re-engravings, which appeared in 1,650 51sts and which are known from anthologies with 86 to 93 sheets. The collection saw 3 more editions after Van Hulle's death between 1696 and 1717, but the sheets were never numbered. The edition of the prints dated 1696 appeared under the new title of Pacificators Orbis Christiani and contained a total of 131 portraits. The 1717 edition had the title Les Hommes Illustres qui ont ve acute cu dans le 17 siècle, Les Principaux Potentats, Princes, Ambassadeurs et Plenipotentiaires qui ont assisté aux conférences de Munster et d'Osnabrück avec leurs armes et devises, dessinées et pinceaux, naturels par le fameux Anselm van Hulle, peintre de Frédéric Henry de Nassau, Prince de Range et gravé par les plus habiles maîtres.